I had done a late night Conan O'Brien show, late night performance. In watching that back and getting to firsthand experience like how difficult it is to convey a sense of like energy and immediacy through late night television musical performances. I watched a few nights after my performance the Alabama Shakes perform on the same show, and all of them just kind of came exploding through the TV. They sounded so good, and just the context of having had that experience and then seeing them and the comparative aspect of it, I was just like, these guys are great. Fast forward a couple months later, I was touring with Fiona Apple. We crossed paths with the Shakes in Austin, Texas, and I told him as much in like sort of a similarly stumbling to get the words out kind of way of like, I saw this and I know how strange and anechoic that thing can be, that environment can be for music, and I just thought you guys sounded fantastic. And that's when we met and started talking, and I think shortly after that they had all become aware of the first solo record I had made, and at the time the only record I had made, and became fans of it and the sound of it and production. We met when they were playing a show in LA, and we talked a little bit about record making and where they were at and what they wanted to accomplish on their next record. And it just felt like a very simpatico relationship, and we started to kind of test it out and get together and work on a couple songs at a time, and then that would go well, so we'd book another few weeks, and all of a sudden we were making a record. We just kept going until it was done, and that was a really important experience for me on a number of different levels. To be fortunate enough to have worked on a record that had commercial success, but that was not created with the hopes of accomplishing that. That's a really powerful place to find yourself, because now you have a little bit of clout to help dispel the weird rumor that, or conversation that whenever an artist is making a record, they have to decide where on the spectrum between artistic creativity and commercial viability they want to land, they want to reside, and that those things are in direct conflict of one another. I think the records that people still talk about as being groundbreaking all-time records are ones that are examples of where those were not sacrificed. Either one of those things were sacrificed to creative spirit and commercial viability. So it was just like the best possible experience to have as far as the type of album to be working on, and with the type of band and personalities, to have that also cross over into the commercial success. It was just like really lucky on a number of levels, and something I'm like forever grateful for. So after the Shakes record came out, there were definitely a lot of calls coming in for production work. One of the artists that I was lucky enough to meet with in the wake of that record was John Legend, and he had heard the record and was a big fan. We met up and started talking about the possibility of making a record together and what that might sound like, and I found that we were in alignment in so many areas, like socially, politically, musically. We have a love for a lot of early R&B and soul, and I just felt like there'd be a lot of room for all of those things in his music. We began meeting and going over a body of work that had largely come from pop songwriters. We began a process of reaching out to unusual songwriters to try to start some new ideas and kind of reapproaching some of the existing pop songs and keeping the structure of them, but completely rewriting the lyrics, shaking things up and trying to make a record that felt like the person that he was on Twitter and on stage when he was somewhere to accept an award and decided to take those 2 minutes to talk about inner city reading levels, or mass incarceration and these things that were important to him, trying to figure out some way to turn his record into a platform for those things. So it was a completely different process than the Shakes record, but one that, was just like a natural progression from making that album. It was taking the spirit of how that record was made and trying to push boundaries and challenge listeners and be fearless, and putting it in a completely different world that felt like a real nice, natural next step. I think one thing that makes artists feel comfortable in a recording studio, which by its nature can be kind of an intimidating environment, is when the other people in the room, the engineer, the producer, when they feel like those people understand where they're coming from and that it's not like a compromise, or like a balance between what the producer wants and what the artist wants. And I think maybe my background in being on the other side of the glass, between the control room and the live room, has helped me gain a perspective of what a lot of people are feeling when they are recording. I never really set out to become a producer or a solo artist or a session musician. They're all just extensions of what I feel like is one approach to just being a creative person, which is that a large part of that for me is a collaborative experience.